Welcome back for another preview video. I'm extremely happy today because I have the opportunity to present to you a game with a fascinating theme that I really adore. It's ancient Greece and the flourishing of the city-states that led to exploration and expansion of the Greek, let's say, golden years from ancient Greece. So this is a game that it's published from Procure Games. It's a new publisher from Hungary that brings a really well crafted design, in my opinion. It has very interesting ideas. It has fantastic table presence, and above all it has a very smooth gameplay. It's nothing like I've seen before so far. It's a game where you get to play one of the city-states, expand it, use the different surroundings to move to different areas, to build different buildings, to build and control city-states, and progress on different, let's say, progression tracks. It could be thought as, you know, I don't know, tech trees or something. Gain different abilities, using mechanisms of deck building, action selection from a fantastic rondel mechanism, and expansion, resource management, and city building. It gives you a very I should say, complete feeling of expansion and progression in this type of category of games. I really enjoyed the game. It's one of the games that I would definitely pick up from the shelf at any given time to teach, to play, to enjoy, because it offers different game modes. But even in the standard mode, it has some very unique and, I should say, finely crafted ideas. We've seen the rondel mechanism before, and personally I love the rondel mechanism, but here they have combined it with the action card driven card play. So you play a card which has, you start with 10 action cards, starting cards, and you can get more powerful cards, which is the deck building aspect of the game. And as you will see later on when I explain the rules, you play one card which has a specific number, and you move on the rondel that type of spaces exactly. If you want to move one less or one more than what the card number says, you have to progress on specific region tracks and gain that ability. And you'll get to do this action that you know, your piece lands on the rondel, but you also get to use the ability of the card, and you also get to move your troops accordingly. So this can be done in any order, and if you put them together, they sound like something you've seen before, but something is unique in this game. I cannot really put my finger in it and describe it, that it delivers a very smooth experience. And this is, I should say, one of the highest peaks of the game, that it has very robust, well-driven, well-designed and well-executed mechanisms that they come together excellently in a very unique and smooth way to give a very satisfying gaming experience. I love the rondel, I love the deck building, I love the resource management, the action selection, the progression. You feel like you're playing a civilization game, but not a civilization game that really ties your hands with too many rules, too many details, too many modifiers. It has a lot of depth, a lot of strategy, a lot of cool ideas that they're blended seamlessly in a very unique and robust way. I totally think that it's one of the best games in the genre, and I'm saying it really up front because I'm going to say more about my opinion and my impressions from the game, from the sessions I had so far at the end of this video. I'm looking forward to see the solo mode, because I didn't get to try the solo mode. It's still being developed, but I'm really looking forward for that one too. But overall, the game really delivers exactly what I would have wanted in this type of genre, in this type of games, with this setting and theme, and with these mechanisms. It has a beautiful table presence. The prototype looks amazing. It offers fast turns. It offers a lot of different pathways. It offers a lot of unique ways to progress your technology. It's not your typical game when you have dudes on the map and you want to just try to go in different areas and just eliminate your opponent. Yes, there is majority. Yes, you need to take control of other players' areas, because they give you progression on the respective according tracks which you want to do, because they give you more bonuses. But you don't focus on a specific player, or you're not trying to eliminate a specific player, because that's not the goal. You're trying to expand in a very robust well-crafted way that gives you a lot of bonuses, a lot of cool strategy tiles, for example, that give you a lot of abilities and a lot of options. Very, very clever, very unique. Also, it's amazingly replayable because it has different locations where the tech tree tiles, let's say the progression track tiles go. So this mixes around the different regions of the game board. It has two sides of the board. You can either play the Mediterranean, which is the Mediterranean Sea, or and the areas around it, or the Aegean Sea, which is a more zoomed in on Greece, let's say, which offer different replayability. You have also the different modes. Oh my god, so many different modes. You have the skirmish mode, you have the legendary mode, which you take also heroes with special abilities. You have team mode, you have the barbarian hordes. You have different modes which bring not just a small thing into the game, they bring a different approach, and it gives also a lot of different flavor. But as a conclusion, but more on that at the end of the video. In between, I'm going to explain all the rules and the details with timestamps, so you can go and find out how the components look, how the game plays, what's the turn structure, how do you win. Overall, wow, what a fantastic game. It's a game I have been looking so many years that it's come out from a publisher, and out of the blue, these guys, I didn't know them. It's the first game they put out. It's my first impression of them. I don't know them. They came out with this fascinating, amazingly executed and fantastically crafted game, which delivers exactly what I would have wanted in this genre, from this setting, and using all my favorite mechanisms: action selection, rondel, deck building, resource management, in a way that really you don't think about it. It's there, it delivers, and it gives a fantastic gaming experience. Don't make the mistake to miss out this game. It should get a ton of attention. Most probably it's the first game from the publisher, because you know, people don't know all these great new games that come out, but this is a fantastic game that needs to be on the radar of everyone out there, especially if you enjoy this type of games. Don't make the mistake to miss this one out. I'm going to add the link in the description of the video where you can find more about the game and the details on how it plays. So let's go on the table to see how the game plays, and let's come back up for a final conclusion and my impressions from the games I played so far. In Pillars of Heracles, you lead the Greek city-state navigating the archaic period of ancient Hellas. This era witnessed the Greeks' pioneering spirit as they explored new lands and established settlements along the vast Mediterranean shoreline. Your goal is to guide your people to greatness and ascend as the most glorious city-state of them all. Develop your city-state by recruiting characters, constructing buildings and monuments, deploying and commanding units, settling new territories, trading resources for powerful upgrades, and seeking divine favor. Secure your triumph by masterfully controlling cities and regions, fulfilling ancient prophecies, and erecting awesome monuments to stand the test of time. In Pillars of Heracles, an epic tale unfolds. You enter the realm of ancient Greece, brave and bold. As players, you embody city-states renowned, competing to reign supreme on sacred ground. By each turn, strategic choices take flight. You raise grand cities, an empire in your sight. You trade and grow, expand your realm, and shape culture and land according to your plan. Call upon gods and their favors for you to implore. Shape your destiny, explore legends galore, and as the game concludes, triumph will befall the players whose pole stands tallest of all. So rally your strength, embrace this grand quest. In Pillars of Heracles, prove that you're the best. With strategy and skill, your fate you'll mount, conquer the ancient realm as legends foretold. Welcome to this prototype preview and how to play of Pillars of Heracles. I'm very excited to show you how the game plays, to navigate through with you through the rules and all the details of the gameplay. It's a very easy game to understand, but has a lot of strategy, a lot of depth, and a lot of beautiful components and table presence. So without further ado, let's proceed. First of all, we start with the components overview. First of all, we have this fantastic game board which has two sides. You see in front of you the game already set up from the Mediterranean side, showing the Mediterranean Sea, but the side on the opposite shows the Aegean Sea and a closer look at Hellas. Each side of the game board consists of spaces and regions. Now let's familiarize ourselves with what is a space and what is a region. A space is a territory on the map of the game board defined by white borders, either a land space belonging to region or a sea space. Therefore, this area here is a sea space, yeah, and this area here is a land space belonging to this region with red borders, which has 3 land spaces. A region consisting of 3 land spaces indicates with the same borders behind the same color border, like in this case 1, 2, 3 behind the red border, they belong to the same region. On the Aegean side of the game board, the space of Cyclades region are considered to be both land and sea spaces. The next thing that we need to focus on is a roundel over here on the lower left side of the game board. We'll zoom in later when we explain the rules, but for the moment keep in mind that the lower left hand corner of the game board features the roundel, a circular action selection wheel. You can advance on the roundel and select an action from it, either procure, deploy, build, settle or ascend, by playing action cards like these from your hand. We have 4 player boards. I have already set up the game, so you see 1, 2, 3, 4 belonging to yellow, red, blue and green player. Your player boards represent your city states you lead. It holds your city state tile. So for example, here you see Sparta, which goes in the slot on the recessed board. Therefore, during the game you will be placing your pillars, units and buildings from your player board onto the main game board by expanding. We have city-state tiles. There is a selection of different city-state tiles. For example, I'll just showing you Sparta. For the moment, just keep in mind that if it has 2 sides, it has a Mediterranean side like this one here. That means when you're playing with the Mediterranean side of the game board, you select this side, while if you're playing with the Aegean side of the game board, you select this one, and it's always depicted on the tile. Of course, you don't have all of the cities on both sides of the map, but there are some overlap. In any case, you have your city-state tile over there. There are player aids, and they're really nicely done. You have from one side a very nice detailed let's say player aid indicating the status check. Then you have either an advance or a replenish turn, and then you have the free actions. Also, it shows how the game ends when it's triggered. Okay, and from this side you have population tile rewards, track rewards, prophecy card icons, strategy tiles, and lots of useful information gathered in one place. Very useful. Each player is going to get one of those, and there is also one solo player aid, player aid for the solo game. We have hero tiles and hero units. I've placed these beautiful miniatures here. I've done a very detailed unboxing of the prototype. Keep in mind that this is a prototype, but it has fantastic value and very beautiful components, as you can see. So these miniatures stand for the 5 options of having 5 heroes to select from, and they have the respective hero tiles with their ability. Okay, so they start here, and you have to deploy them by spending 2 gold, but this is a module, so they're not you don't use the heroes, the hero tiles and the hero miniatures on the normal standard game. It's very easy to use them. They give you special ability and some additional power that you need to take it where your strategy takes you, but it's a modular addition, so you don't use them in the standard game, only if you want to add the module. Then you will see that we have 6 track tiles. They are already placed as per setup randomly. So for example, this one here, it is one of those tracks. Yeah, it has, specifically this is a mercenary track, which is linked with a gold resource. I mix them and I randomly place them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, but this is part of the setup. They're not going to be placed on the same spot, and this gives them modularity and replayability also. And for the moment, just keep in mind that the one that I just showed you, the mercenary, is linked with the resource of gold. Then you have this one on the top, which is the civilization one, and it's linked with the resource of marble. You have this one, the navigation one, which is linked with the resource of wood. You have the military, this one, which is linked with the resource of iron, and you have the Olympian one, which is this one, which is linked with wine, and last you have the Titan one, which is here, which is a wild. We have 20 resource tiles. You see them, for example, have already used this one. By the way, the starting ones have this icon on the back. Okay, so this is part of drafting during setup. So each region is going to get one resource tile. You don't move them around. You know that, for example, this land space is producing gold, or gold is abundant, in abundance. For example, this one is producing wine. Okay, and there are in total 20 of those. During setup, they're placed face down on the main board. More on that later. We have wine, marble, gold, iron, and wood. And then we also have the city tiles, 20 in total. We have 16 common city tiles. These are these ones that I have already placed during setup on spot 3 and spot 5 on each of the tracks, and you unlock them by specific steps and checks. More on that later. These take the player marker in the middle, so it shows to which player it belongs, but these are gray and they are neutral. They're going to be placed on the different land spaces during the course of the game. But you also have 4 starting city tiles, one on each player. For example, for the green one, again placed during setup, it indicates that this is the city state of the green player where they start from. Also, keep in mind that we have the population tiles. There are a total of 18. These are face down. You have 3 icons. This indicates that they all have the number 4. This can be from 4, 5 or up to 6, and this one can be from 6, 8, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Okay, so 3 different types of population tiles. They all do the same, it just gives different ranges for the value, and they have different bonuses, of course, described below. Once you settle and you gain them, you will be able to remove them and put your pillars on. More on that later. There are some additional ones over here. These are the barbarian ones, but these are only used if you're playing with a barbarian module, another module, to give the barbarian hordes gameplay mode. You have strategy tiles. These are belonging on 3 different types, and they are already split 1, 2, 3 different types, and they're already split and set up according to instructions for setup here on the top left side of the game board. These give different abilities during the game, and you unlock them when you gain 1 row from your deploy. You can pick one of those 2. When you unlock one of the build row, you can pick one of those 2, and when you unlock one of the pillar ones, you can take one of those 2, meaning one of those 2, either this one or that one. And essentially they give you more permanent abilities. We also have a selection of cards. These purple colored, very nicely illustrated cards, again shown on during the prototype unboxing. They have different backs. Okay, there are 3 different categories. We have these ones, which are the demigod cards, which we have these ones, which are the Titan cards, and we have this one, which are the Olympian cards. These are all considered mythology cards. It's a total number of 30. You can only have 1 when you start the game, mythology card, and they give you various abilities, and you can you know, use them and then revoke them and then energize them again to be ready to be used by paying a wine, etc. More on that later. But you can unlock all the way up to 3. That's why you have 1, 2, 3 slots, as you see on top of your main board. More on the mythology cards later. We have a selection of action cards. We have the starting action card, so each player is starting with their own deck of 10 action cards. Okay, this is a draw card, the draw deck, a starting draw deck for each player, and they will be able to take more action cards. This is an action card driven game which has very nice multi-use approach to the action cards. And this is we have 3 decks here plus 3 more decks for the monuments. So these are characters, 1, 2, 3 decks of characters, and 1, 2, 3 decks from the deck of monuments. Okay, so same category those 3 and same category those 3, and these are used for building your deck and getting more powerful cards across the course of the game. We also have the forbidden cards. These are used to block areas, So if we're playing with 3-player game, for example, we'll be blocking this one, so this is going to go here to indicate that you cannot move, populate or settle these areas. Okay, but you will be able to use the tracks. The tracks, all 6 tracks are used in all of the games. We also have skirmish tiles, so this tile over here is only used in the skirmish mode. This is another third mode, game mode of the game. Each player has also their siege tiles. This is a normal tile that you use when you do siege, okay, to indicate your color. And we have, in addition to that, the player pieces. These belong to the player and they have their color. Okay, so we have a total number of 48 discs in 4 colors. So these discs, you see some of those on the side of the yellow player. Okay, you place one on each of the starting spot of the tracks. Then you have hoplites. You have 2 on your deploy box, plus another 3 that you can gain through the course of the game. Then you have your builders in the middle row, 1 and 1, 2. More on that later. You will be able to use them and bring them on the board to build more buildings. And you have 2 navy ships, so that you can use to sail around the Mediterranean Sea or the Aegean Sea if you're playing from the back side. On top of those 6 units that are ready to be deployed, so you need to deploy them, you start with 1 hoplite, more on that during setup, 1 worker, your city-state, your first pillar, you have 6 more over here, and your sea unit in the area, sea area adjacent to your city-state. Okay, so this is all in all of the components of the game that you have. As I said, there is a lot of, also we have these tiles here from the mythology creatures, which may come into play, but there you have, these are all the components of the game and everything you need to know in terms of what you have in the box. So now let's proceed with game setup. Now for the game setup, first we'll start with the game board setup. We select side of the game board. We have the Mediterranean Sea from this side, which has the Mediterranean theater, as you can see, or the Aegean one, which is on the back side of the game board. This gives a different variety in the game, and there is no, I should say, suggestion from which one to start. In any case, the game is explained with this side to begin, if that means anything or not, but there is no indication for any difference in terms of complexity, at least. Maybe more on that on the designer's note later on. For the moment, the next step that we do is we separate the mythology cards here, the ones with a purple background, as you can see. They have the same format in the back, they only have a different icon in the center of the card. Okay, so this deck, if you remember, is this one is the Titans, this is the demigod ones, and this is the Olympian ones. Okay, so we separate them by the type, and we create the 3 decks, and we place them here on the respective slots on the game board. Okay, so the full deck of each type goes on the respective slot. The next thing we do is we shuffle the monument cards and separate them into 3 face down decks as evenly as possible on the top 3 slots of the game board. Now focus here on the left side of the game board. We have 3 slots on the top with the monument icon. This is the monument icon here. It's printed on these 3 slots. So we separate them as evenly as possible. We flip the first one face up from each of the 3 equally decks, 1, 2, 3, and we place them here. We do the same. This is a procurement area, basically, from which we build our arsenal of more interesting and more powerful action cards. We do the same with the character cards for the bottom 3 spots of the game board. Here we have the character cards. We separate them into 3 face down decks as evenly as possible, and we place them on the bottom 3 slots of the procurement area. And again, we reveal the top one on each of those 3, just to show you. This is the icon of, maybe here, this is the icon of the character cards, and you can also find it on the bottom of the respective card. The back side of all those cards doesn't looks the same, whether it's monument or character cards, and they're also the same linked with your starting cards, okay, because you don't want the other players to know what type of cards you have in your hand when you draw them. But you want to gain as many as possible from the procurement area, because this will be give you more options and they will be more powerful for sure. Now, the next thing that we do, keep in mind that if we're playing with 3 players, we remove any character card showing the 3-player icon as indicated in the rulebook. And the next thing that we do is we shuffle the track tiles. So these are the track tiles, face down. We shuffle them and we place one on each of the 6 slots as I have shown you before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots on the game board. These are randomly placed there and revealed. We place a common city on the step 3 and step 5 of each track. So step 3 and step 5, this goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah? So we place one neutral city on common city tile in step 3 and step 5 on each track, and a number of common city tiles equal to the number of players in the space below the build section of the roundel, which is over here. So with 4 players, I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 common city tiles there, because you can build them by spending one of each of the 4 resources needed for the build city, but more on that later. Then the next thing that we do is we separate the strategy tiles into 6 piles. So there are 3 types of strategy tiles. You can see them here by the icon. 1, 2, 3 different types of icons. Okay, we separate them face down. Let me show you one of those piles face down. Okay, so this is one of the 3 types of strategy tiles. We separate them and we take 3 and place them on one slot, plus another 3, and we place it on the second slot next to the icon of the corresponding type. Yeah, we have 3 types of icons. Then we flip. Once we do that, we flip the one face up tile, the first one on the pile face up, so that it's visible. Okay, so each player, if they are eligible to pick up one of those tiles, more on that later, for example with this icon, which you get when you empty one row from your build area of your player board, more on that later, you can pick either this one, the top one, or that one. Okay, if it is from this icon, which is from your settle, it's either this one or that one, and if it is from the deploy one, which has the helmet, it's either this one or that one. Okay, so we set up this area with the strategy tiles respectively. Then we place the Atlantis tile. This is the Atlantis tile. Okay, and we take it and we place it on the Fortunate Isles C space of the game board. So this goes here. Okay, it has a number 10 on it to remind you that it needs a power of 10 in order to settle it. And when playing with 2 players on the Mediterranean side of the game board, instead you place the Atlantis side on the sea space directly to the east of the Fortunate Islands, and in here. Then the next thing that we do is we take and we place the mythology tiles, which are linked with specific mythology cards. So these circular ones, 1, 2, 3, here on the side of the game board. Player area setup. Each player chooses a color and takes all of the components in their color. 1 player board, 1 starting city tile, 12 units, 6 buildings, 7 pillar, 12 player markers, 1 siege tile, and 10 starting action cards. You remove all components from any unused player colors from the game, and then each player places 6 of their units in the deploy area of their pillar board. From left to right we have ship, then we have those 2 which stand for worker, and those 2 which stand for hoplite. Then we place the 6 buildings in the build area of your player board. Again, from left to right we have the 2 temples, we have the 2 agora, and we have the 2 citadels. Last but not least, we have the settle area portion of the player board, which has 6 of their pillars, 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom, and we place them in the settle area respectively. Then we select the first player and we give them the first player marker, which is this one. and goes to the first player. Most probably there's going to be some option for early access or deluxe backers, more on that on the crowdfunding campaign page. And we also have the siege icon, the siege tile, which is this one, plus the discs from the player. You're going to have 5 of them next to your player board, and the rest are going to go on the main board. So but before doing that, let's start with the city-state tiles. You see, I start already with a city-state tile here. Again, it shows to which area it belongs. This belongs to Egypt, and this is from the Mediterranean side of the board. If we were playing the Aegean side of the board, instead it's going to be Corinthos, another big city in ancient Greece, and it's going to be in the region of Peloponnesus. And you see that it's from the other side of the board because it has the Aegean marker indicator. Okay, but we're playing from the Mediterranean side. Then how you pick up those tiles? You shuffle those city tiles. Okay, we have, for example, others like Sparta, Syracuse, and more, Athens. Okay, so depending, not every city plays on a depends on the side of the board that you're playing. But you take the city-state tiles, then you randomly draw a number of tiles equal to the number of players plus 1 and place them in a row, with their sides corresponding to the chosen side of the game board, either Aegean or Mediterranean. In this case, Mediterranean. In case of the drawn city states, you have starting spaces in the same region. You keep drawing until you get city-states that have starting spaces in different regions. Okay, so they need to be in different regions, you cannot have in the same region. And then you shuffle the starting resource tiles. Again, the starting resource tile, just a resource tile from this side. Okay, in this case gold, but it's not blank, it has this icon from the back. So you shuffle those starting resource tiles and place one randomly below each of the drawn city-state tiles. So you have 5 pairs if you're playing a 4-player game, one more than the number of players. In reverse order, starting with the player to the right of the player with the first player marker and proceeding anti-clockwise, each player selects a city-state tile and the starting resource tile below it, placing the city-state tile in the top region section of the player board. Then, meaning they take the city tile from the selection, this way, and they place it here. Then they remove, every player is doing that, okay, in the order that I mentioned, and then we remove all unused city-state tiles and starting resources, including the ones drawn but not selected by any player from the game. So each player is going to have a starting city tile, which depicts where they're going to place their starting city token, and also they're going to have, as a pair from the selection, one starting resource. In reverse turn order, each player places one hoplite, their one remaining worker, the one remaining pillar, the starting city tile, and the starting resource tile face up on the starting land space indicated on the city-state tile, as well as one remaining ship on the adjacent sea space. For example, in the previous case, I selected this one. Okay, so I'm placing it in Egypt, and specifically in Kyrene. Okay, so it's here. So I place my city tile here in this land space. I place one of my hoplites, the one remaining hoplite, one of my workers, okay, and the last remaining pillar that goes here. Also, this was my paired with my city tile starting resource, so I place it there face up, and I also take one starting sea naval unit and I place it in the area adjacent to my starting location. Then each player places one of their player markers on each of the 0 steps of the military, mercenary, navigation, civilization, Olympian and Titan tracks, and then in reverse turn order moves their marker one step to the right on the track corresponding to the region indicated on the city-state tile and takes a corresponding reward. More on that later. But you see, I placed one yellow here, one yellow here, there, and I've done that for all 6 tracks. Same here, yeah. But as you can see, my starting land space has this icon, so I'm going to check the corresponding track which you can see here for the same icon, and therefore I moved it one step to the right to indicate my starting, let's say, bonus. Okay, and this is done as described earlier. Last but not least, each player places the 3 remaining hoplites next to the mercenary gold track beside the game board. For the moment I've placed them on the lower part of my screen just to fit everything, but it makes more sense to place it below the mercenary track, which is this one here, because you see you can gain them from this track as unlocks by progressing there. Finishing the game board setup. Each player takes their 10 starting action cards. Okay, each player has their own starting deck. You can see it belongs to the yellow player by the yellow color. Okay, so these are the 10 starting yellow cards. So you shuffle your 10 starting action cards and you place them face down to the left side of your player board over here. From there, following the numbers in their hand, draws a number of cards in their hand according to their turn. So the first player draws 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is my draw deck and this is my starting hand, which is hidden. I'm the only one able to see it. Okay, so this is my starting hand, and that's for the first player. They draw 5 cards, the second player draws 6 cards, the third player draws 6 cards, and the fourth player draws 7 cards. Each player places one of their player markers on the ascend section of the rondel. You can see it here, the ascent section of the rondel, the ascent action of the rondel. So you place one of your markers there, and leaving them with 5 player markers next to their player board. Now, another important rule to note is that when you're playing with less than 4 players, not all regions of the game board will be in play and they will need to be blocked. To block a region, you place one forbidden domain card on the region card space. For example, here, this one is going to be blocked, so it's just going to take 1 block card. So for a 3-player game, you block 1 region, or for a 2-player game, you block 2 regions, selecting from the regions that do not contain any player's starting city. To do this, in the following order of preference: Mediterranean side of the map, Libya, Iberia, Aegyptos and Anatolia, and Aegean side of the map, Ionia, Macedonia, Lydia and Peloponnesus. In a 4-player game, no regions are blocked, okay, and all regions are going to be available for players. The next thing that we do is we sort out the prophecy cards. And now let's focus on the prophecy cards. The prophecy cards have 3 eras. So you have, this is the back of the prophecy cards, this is the front of the prophecy cards. You can have era 3, era 2 and era 1. So from each of the decks, 1, 2 or 3, you take 1 randomly and you place the 3 on the bottom, then on top the 2 and then on top the 1. And you place 1 set of those, like the one I showed you, on each of the boxes that take cards for the regions. So for Libya, you make this one, and then you reveal face up the top card from the deck, and you do that for all of the areas that they have prophecy cards. Then we separate the population tiles. These are the population tiles. We separate the population tiles by type based on their icons on their back. Could be either helmet, cornucopia or eagle. Once we separate them by type, we shuffle each of those stacks, and in each land space that does not contain a starting city, except those in blocked regions, if any, you place a face down population tile of the corresponding type as indicated in the symbols on the land spaces, and you remove any unused population tiles from the game. So all these spaces like this one, we take one of those. All these spaces like this one, we'll take one of those face down, and all these spaces like this one, we'll take one of those. The remaining population tiles are going to be removed out of the game, and of course you do that throughout the whole, across the whole board area. The last thing we need to do for the setup is we shuffle the resource tiles. Again, I remind you, these are the resource tiles. Okay, it could be any of the resource mentioned. We shuffle them face down in a pile like that, and we place one in each land space that does not contain a starting city, except those in blocked regions. Okay, to maintain a balance of resources in games with fewer than 4 players, in a 2-player game remove one of each of the 5 types of resource tiles, and in 3-player game remove one of each of the 3 different types of resource tile at random before shuffling resource tiles at the start of the step. Any unused resource tiles are removed from the game, but the game setup concludes by having face-down resource tiles which are revealed together with the population tiles once a unit enters this area and explores it. General rules. The game objective. The objective of the game is to become the most glorious city-state of them all. You can gain glory in the game by controlling cities and regions, building monuments and fulfilling prophecies. The game ends triggers when players have collectively reached the end of a number of region tracks equal to the number of players, when a player controls 6 cities, or when 3 Era 3 prophecy cards have been removed from the game board. The player with the most glory wins the game, and glory can be gained from prophecy and monument cards, as well as by controlling cities and regions at the end of the game. More on that at the end of this video. There is a golden rule that should a card or a tile effect contradict the general game rules, always prioritize and adhere to the specific instructions of that card or tile, like we expect. Also, we have city-state abilities. I remind you that city-state tiles have specific abilities that are described on the city tile itself. Each city-state tile has a unique ability described on it, and you may use the ability of your city-state tile whenever it applies during the course of the game. So, for example, for each of your hoplite contributes 1 extra power, because Sparta was a military city-state. Makes sense. Thematic. Then, gaining strategy tiles. Remember, we have the strategy tiles on the top left side of the board, those small rectangular ability tiles. During the game, you may gain strategy tiles from the space on the left side of the game board, and when you gain one, you place it in any of the 2 adjacent empty spaces on your player board. If you do not have sufficient empty space, you must discard one or move or more of your existing tiles that you recently gained and remove them from the game to make space for the new one. You cannot rearrange your tiles at any time. And after gaining a strategy tile, you flip the next tile on the stack face up so that it's available for the rest players. Strategy tiles on your player board grant you ongoing abilities which are very, very important. So let me show you. Once you gain them, depending on the type that you gained, this one, you can gain either of the ones on the top here, for this one either of the ones on the top here, and for this one either of the ones on the top here. When you gain it, you pick up the one or the other from the type corresponding to the icon you unlocked, and you place it on your player board. But you see, this one that I unlocked will go here. Okay, so I can have 1, 2, 3 different types of strategy tiles, and when I place it, I'm going to have it here. Okay, so this gives me a specific ability. For example, Olympic Games, you deploy a military unit. All these are explained very nicely in the appendix of the rulebook, so you don't have to memorize anything. You'll be able to see them and see the explanation exactly as it is in the rulebook, and there are also the icon reminder on your player aid. Forbidden domains. When playing with fewer than 4 players, 1 or 2 regions will be blocked during setup. These are forbidden domains as indicated by the forbidden domain cards placed on these regions. There is an exception of the region tracks. They're all used no matter how many players are playing the game, so all 6 tracks are used. But the difference is that forbidden domains do not contain any prophecy cards, population tiles or resource tiles and land spaces or forbidden domains of different forbidden domains, as well as any ports corresponding to them cannot be moved into or interacted with any way. Okay, so here I have some icons and tiles from the setup, but imagine that all these spaces would be empty and you cannot enter or interact with these spaces if they're forbidden, because you're playing with less than 4 players, okay, as explained earlier. But in this case, we have a 4-player game setup, so we have prophecy cards and tokens. Another important concept in the game is power. Power is a fundamental concept in the game, representing your influence in various parts of game board. Each of your units, buildings, pillars and cities contributes a certain amount of power. For example, each of your workers, agoras, temple, pillars, and cities contributes 1 power to your total on the space they occupy. During a siege, when another player's siege tile is on the same land space, a city contributes 3 power instead of 1. Also, each of your ships contributes 1 power on the sea space they occupy and also to 1 adjacent land space of your choice. They cannot extend your power to adjacent sea spaces. If occupying a port, a ship instead provides 2 power in the corresponding land space. Each of your hoplites contributes 2 power to your total on the space they occupy, and each of your citadels provides 3 power on the space they occupy. Your overall power in a region is the sum of the power granted by your units, buildings, pillars, and cities in that region. When power is assigned to a specific certain land space of your choice, that choice only applies during the turn in which the choice is made. In later turns, you may change that choice whenever power is counted. Also keep in mind that each action card has a number which is a power number indicated in the middle of the card. Power can be used primarily to advance on the rondel during your action advance turn, we'll explain that later, or for your settle actions, more of that later. The power of the card can also be used during the tactical card support in skirmish mode, okay? But there is also a link with power with this number here. We'll explain it later. Another important concept is control. You control a space if you have more power in the space than any other player and your power exceeds the sum of any population tiles in the space. Meaning, it doesn't matter if you have more power than any other player in this area here, if it is not more than the population tile. Of course, this is going to be revealed because when I have unit here, it's going to be revealed. So I need to have more than 4 in order to control this region. And no matter if I have 3 and my opponents have 2, okay? Otherwise, I do not control it. You control, therefore, a region if you have more power in the region than any other player and your power exceeds the sum of any population tiles in the region. That means for you to control a region, let's say you want to control this whole region here, all these 3 tiles are going to be revealed, okay? And you need to have more power than the total sum of the population tiles in the region in order to control the region, okay? Again, more on that later. But it's important because you want to control regions because they give you strategic advantages, and it's one of the things that we pursue in the game. You control a city if you have your player marker on it, indicating that you control it. Or if it is your starting city and no other player has a marker on it. In case of ties for power, the tied player whose player marker has progressed further on the corresponding region track controls the space. And when more than 1 player markers is on the same track space, markers higher in the stack are considered ahead of any markers underneath them. In case of player markers of the tied players that they are sitting on the 0 step of the region track, the tie is undecided and no one is considered to be controlling the space because no one has moved at all from the on this corresponding track. Otherwise, the track of this region is used to determine the tiebreaker. Gaining cities. Each player starts the game with their own starting city, as you've seen before. Further city tiles or miniatures can be gained in different ways during the course of the game. And there may only be 1 city tile in each land space, so you cannot have more than 1 city in a single land space. I'm not talking about the region, I'm talking about a specific land space can only take 1 city tile. When reaching the end of a track, when you progress to the step 5 of a region track, so let's focus on this one, 4, 5, okay, so if you progress from here all the way to the 5 step, okay, for each of the tracks, if there is still a common city tile there, you gain it for free as a track reward. When you gain a common city tile, you place it in any land space containing at least 1 of your buildings, land units or pillars, but no other city. And then you place on there your marker, okay, to indicate that it's yours. But okay, I'm just placing it here, but I need to control it, okay? In this case, this is from setup, so I don't control this, but I need to control in order to place the city, and my yellow marker needs to reach over here in order to receive this as a reward. Okay. Keep in mind that it could be that in a rare case that you cannot place a common city tile you have gained from progressing to step 5 of your track. You set it aside next to your player board, and then you may place it at any time when you have the ability to do so during your turn. The next opportunity to place city tiles is when evaluating regions. When a player first progresses to step 3, so let's say I was on step 3, 1, 2, 3 here. So when the player is first progressing to step 3 of a tile, you see that there is still a city tile there. The player who has the most power in that region gains the common city tile on this step and must immediately place it in a suitable space in that region specifically, a land space in which they have at least one unit, building or pillar that does not yet contain a city. In case of ties for power, the tile player whose player marker has progressed furthest on the track step marker higher in a stack are considered ahead of the markers underneath. But this is a tiebreaker for the power, who has the most power in the region. If that player is not able to place a city tile in the region, including in the region its forbidden domain, they must instead place it in a suitable space in a different region. If that player cannot place the city in any region, or in case of a tie for a power where all tile players are at the step 0 of the region track, then it is placed in the space below the build section of the rondel over here to be available to be built. Okay? Otherwise, they can place it according to the normal rules. So this is very, very important, because this is a way to gain more cities and place them on the main board, because you want to have cities, as you will see later on. Building cities. Common city tiles can also be gained through the build action, where you can pay the resources to build them if you have available city tokens there. Atlantis is a special city that only exists in sea space. You may take control of it by settling it with at least 10 power. We'll see more on how settling works later on. Atlantis is also considered a wild resource tile that you can deplete it if you have a pillar in its space. And it is over here, and that's why you see the number 10 of it, because it reminds you that you need to have a 10 power in order to settle it. Okay? I believe, I haven't seen it in the rulebook, but I believe this specific city is going to be used also here to indicate that this is a city of Atlantis, but that's just my guess, maybe wrong here. So that's all about gaining cities. Now let's talk about resources. Spending resources. There are 5 resources in the game. We have from left to right: wine, marble, gold, iron, and wood. Whenever you need to spend a resource, you discard an action card showing the corresponding resource from your hand, and or deplete a matching resource tile in the same space as one of your pillars by moving your pillar on it. This will make sense more later. The resource indicated on the action card played at the start of an advanced turn cannot be used. So for example, if I spent this action card, it shows a marble, so I can use it for paying for marble. Or if I have my pillar, okay, and in order for me to have a pillar, certain things need to happen there. I need to have settled it next to a resource like this one. I can deplete it, which again it's refreshed later on, but I can deplete it, showing that I spend it in order to use the gold. Okay, when it's there, it's available. When it's there, have depleted it and have used it. So that's the way I'm using resources in the game. I'm not gaining physical components of resources. I need to be either spending action cards indicating this resource on their action card for the resource, or I need to be moving pillars on top of resource icons which are linked with specific regions that I control, of course, in order to be able to use them. So, the resource indicated on the action card played at the start of the advanced turn cannot be used, as I mentioned. And we have trading. To acquire a specific resource, you can exchange a resource you possess in a 2-to-1 ratio, that is 2 of the same resource for 1 of another type. You may acquire a specific resource in a 1-to-1 ratio if your ship is in a port corresponding to the land space displaying the desired resource, which is not depleted. Meaning, if a player is here on this board, they can use it with a 1-to-1 ratio, okay, and that's also very interesting. Resource tile and port occupancy. Each resource tile can be occupied by and used by one pillar at a time. Similarly, each port can be occupied and used by one ship at a time. Okay, so keep that in mind. Exploring land spaces. When any pieces are moved or otherwise placed in a land space with any face-down resource and/or population tiles, those spaces are explored, revealing what they have beneath them. So the population tile is going to be revealed, and the same is going to happen for the resource tile if they are face down. But this can also occur as a result of certain card effects. Now, progressing on tracks. You can progress on the region tracks primarily during the status check and the ascend action. More on that later. Certain cards and tiles may also give you track progression opportunities. Whenever you progress on a track, you place your player marker on top of any other player markers on the same step. So for example, let's say that yellow was going to progress 2 times. They're going to move 1, 2, and then they're going to be on top of the stack of any other players located on the spot they arrived. Now, let's see the track rewards and abilities, respectively. These are captured and explained nicely on the player aid, as you can see, but let's focus on the track rewards and see how they work. Now, whenever you see this or that, the character or the monument icon as a reward on a track, that means that you take the character monument card from the procurement area into your hand for free at the end of your turn, and then flip the top card of the deck you took it from face up. When you have this icon, which shows the city, if there is still a common city tile on this step, you gain it for free. Now, let's see the civilization track specifically. You have this icon linked with a hand size. From now on, you replenish your size with 5, 6 or 7 cards instead of 5, which is the starting one, the normal one. If you see this icon over here, that's +1 or -1. That means you may optionally move your marker 1 additional space or 1 fewer space when advancing on the rondel during the advance turn. And this makes more sense because now I need to explain it that when you play a card, you're going to move that many spaces on the rondel clockwise as its power. So your destination is very much linked with what card you played on from your hand. So if you want to manipulate that minus or plus, you need to move on this civilization track, which is very useful. Now, let's move on the navigation track, which is here. During your turn, you have 2, 3 or 4 movements before or after each of your procurement, deploy, build or settle action, which give you the opportunity to move. So this gives additional movement points which are very valuable. The military track, as you can expect, it has to do with power. That's why you see a +1 on the pillar, a +1 on the hoplite, a +1 on the settler, on the worker, and a +1 on the sea unit. Each of your pillars, hoplites, workers, and ships contributes 1 extra power. A ship in a sea space contributes 1 extra power to both its sea space and adjacent land space. A ship in its port contributes an extra power to its corresponding land space only. Then we have the mercenary track, which is here. For the mercenary track, by spending an extra iron, as you can see here, the icon of iron, by spending an extra iron, in addition to any cost for progressing on its track, you may take one of your hoplites from beside your board next to the mercenary track that you placed there during setup and place it in any land space containing one of your cities. Note that this is not considered a deploy action by definition. Last but not least, we have the Olympian Titan track. You get population tile rewards. So you draw 2 cards from the demigod, the Titan, or Olympian deck. You keep one, placing it face up on the empty mythology card slot above your player board, and discarding the other one face down at the bottom to its deck. If you have no free slot, you may choose to discard any of your mythology cards that you have to free up a slot. Okay, and this is useful because this is where you gain mythology cards. As you can see, the rewards of the tracks are fascinating and very, very useful, and this is a part that really energizes and gives juice to your engine as you progress in the game. Gameplay overview. Starting with the player who is holding the first player marker and proceeding in a clockwise order, the game continues until the end of the game is triggered. On your turn, when you're an active player, you must perform a status check and then either A, an advanced turn, or B, a replenish turn. Additionally, at any time during your turn, you may perform any number of reactions, which can be A, invoking a mythology card, B, fulfilling a prophecy, C, placing a siege tile. In addition to another player's turn, you may also invoke one mythology card. This is captured really nicely on the player aid. On the flip side, we have the track rewards and the icons. And here we have, first you do the status check, and then you either do an advance or replenish turn. The advance turn is explained, and the replenish turn is explained. And here you have your free actions, as well as a reminder about the game end and what triggers it. So very nicely gathered in one card for us to have easy access. Now let's focus with the status check. This is where you'll assess your progression towards the different area-based objectives and claim the rewards you have earned. At the beginning of your turn, if your siege tile, which is this one, I remind you, is located, if your siege tile is located on the game board, you have to resolve a siege. So siege is resolved as following. If you control a space containing your siege tile, and it also contains a city that is controlled by another player, except if there is a city only their city, you win the siege and you may remove the other player's marker, if any, from the city and place your own marker on it. In case where, regardless essentially whether you won or lost the siege, you remove the siege tile. And then you skip the remaining steps of the status check. If you have a siege tile, you just do what I just described. Okay, try to gain the area, which will happen if you have control automatically, and then you will skip the rest of your status check. Otherwise, for each region, you have first domination. If you control a land space where another player has a pillar, building, or city, you may progress on the region track. That means if a player is here and they have control, we'll see they have control if they have more power than me. Okay, so they have units here that give them more power than me, and essentially they gain control. Okay, if there is a pillar, a building, or a city, okay, could be either of those, then because I control this space, domination, I progress on that specific region's track one step. Essentially, this is a way of chasing other players to control their areas, because you want to progress on their respective region track, no matter where they are. The other additional thing is the consolidation. So what I described is the domination. You have consolidation if you control at least 3 land spaces with the same icon printed on them. So for example, this one with a helmet, so 1, I start here, the yellow player with 1. If I also control this one, second one, and let's say this one, third one, so 3 helmets, could be 3 helmets, 3 cornucopia, or 3 eagles. Okay, if I control at least 3 spaces with the same icon printed on them, I may progress one step on one of the 2 tracks corresponding to this icon. And you can see that, for example, helmet is here on the mercenary track, but also here on the military track. So if I control 3 land spaces with this icon, I can either progress on this track with the helmet or on that one. And this goes for each icon respectively. Keep in mind that you may progress at most 1 on each region track during the status check. You may never progress beyond step 4 of a track during a status check. That means I can only progress to the space before the final space with the status check. If I'm eligible to progress more and I'm here, I just don't gain the extra progression either from domination or consolidation. And this is the status check, which happens if you start your turn, you do the status check first. So essentially during this step you're trying and you focus to gain as much control of other player areas momentarily, preferably, to gain a progression on the different tracks or control land spaces with at least 3 of the same icon to progress on this type of icon, either of the 2 tracks with the same icon. That's a status check. Now let's see the advance turn, because after my status check, I remind you, I either take an advance turn or a replenish turn. Let's see how these are explained. Advance turn. You play an action card from your hand, placing it on your personal discard pile. You advance your player marker clockwise on the ronder, exactly as indicated by the number of the power on your card you just played, in this case 2. But if I played that card, I would move 1. Okay, so I need to time it correctly. So by doing so, I would play this card and I would advance 1, 2, which means I will do the deploy action, possibly, or I can skip it if I cannot do it. But that's what I'm targeting when I play cards, to time, trying to play specific cards that give me the number that I want to go and do the action by moving in this clockwise way in this rondel. So you advance your player marker clockwise on the rondel, exactly as many spaces as the power on the card you just played. Any other players already having markers in this space, let's say the red player was already there and the yellow player played this card, they started from the ascent, so 1, 2, they come here. Okay, any other player having their marker on the space you landed, they may immediately draw 1 card from the draw pile and have more options in their hand. Then you may perform, as an active player, the following optional actions up to once in any order. Use the ability of the card you played for the advance turn, if it has one. So this one doesn't have one, but let's say I had the shield master, the shield maker. Okay, I would be able to use the ability if I wanted, which in this case gives me the opportunity to draw a card for every 2 hoplites you have on the game board, or each other player with fewer hoplites on the game board, then you must discard the card. Very nice card. Okay, so this is in the middle, in the white box, you have an ability. So you can use the ability of the card you played. You can also do movement. If your marker is now on the Procure, this action, deploy this action, or build this action. So 1, 2, 3. And I think maybe an advice to the designers here, the developers, I think it will be nice to have a different color at this section to indicate that these 3 spots are linked with movement. Okay, it makes sense after a while, you remember it. Okay, it's nice to have a reminder. In any case, if you end your marker in the Procure, deploy, or build, or settle, oh wait a minute, I stand corrected, because you see, if you end in the ascent, you cannot move. It's explained here, so no, that's my bad, it's already explained. So any of those 4 spaces, if you end up your marker in any of those 4 spaces, you may move your units as explained later when we touch the movement. And then you can do, not then, you can do it with any order, but you can also do the rondel action, which is the main thing that drives you, suppose, which is to do the deploy in this case, or the build, or the settle, or the Procure, or the ascent. But if you land on the ascent, I remind you, you will not be able to move. So again, in the advanced turn, I play an action card. I move exactly the number of spaces on the rondel clockwise as indicated on the action card played. Any other players with a marker there, they get to draw 1 card. And then I can do with any order this following optional up to 1 time each. Use the ability of the card if any, movement, and the rondel action itself. Also, before, after, and in between these actions, you may perform any number of free actions, which we'll explain later. Okay, but this is important. Right, now that's the advanced turn, and we're going to come back later to explain all these actions on the rondel, what you can do with ascent, what you can do with Procure, with deploy, with build and settle, which are the driving force, let's say the power horse of the game, and these are the rondel actions. But for the sake of structure in this video, let's just say that we didn't do an advanced turn, we did a replenish turn. If you do a replenish turn, again, this is captured here, If you do a Replenish Turn instead of an advance, if you do a Replenish Turn after your status check, first you replenish your hand. You may discard any cards from your hand and draw back to your replenish size, which is 5 by default, but it can increase by 1 for every 2 steps on the civilization track. Drawing cards whenever you would then need to draw an action card from your deck but your draw pile is depleted, you shuffle your discard pile card, including any recently played, and to form a new draw pile, of course. Then you replenish pillars. You remove all your pillars from your resource tiles, keeping them in the same space but just placing them next to it. So if you have the pillar on a resource, you just place it next to it, okay? And the next thing that you do is you may energize any number of invoked mythology cards by spending the amount of wine indicated on them to turn them upright. The mythology cards, I remind you, are these cards, okay, and they have an amount of wine that needs to be energized. So these are above your player board, and you can only have 1 or up to 3 if you have unlocked them. But if they are depleted like that, you can spend wine to place them upwards at this step in order to energize them, to have them available to be activated again during your course of your game, okay? But more on that later. For the moment, keep that in mind. You replenish your hand, draw cards, replenish your pillars, and again you energize any number of invoked mythology cards by spending wine. This is the total part of the Replenish Turn. Before, after, and between these actions, you may perform any number of free actions. The player aid does a fantastic job to capture the free actions, again, as you can see them. So to perform a free action, you may use the ability of a mythology card by invoking it, tapping it sideways, okay, so that it shows that you invoked it. You can fulfill a prophecy by meeting the conditions on the prophecy card, which is face up in the region that it focuses, or by placing a siege tile. You may perform any number of free actions during your turn, and you may invoke at most 1 mythology card during another player's turn after their status check and only between any of their main actions or steps. If multiple players wish to perform a free action at the same time, they may do so starting with the active player, then going clockwise in clockwise fashion. So 3 options. Invoke a mythology card. You may invoke an energized mythology card, which is standing upwards, upright, above your player board, which means you have it in your possession, by using its ability and turning it sideways. Unless otherwise specified, the mythology card can be used at any time, even on another player's turn. While a mythology card is turned sideways, it's invoked. Its normal upright state is energized, and you need to pay wine in order to energize it during your Replenish Turn, as I explained before. Another free action is the Fulfill a Prophecy. To fulfill a prophecy, you must have accomplished the quest indicated on its region. You take the prophecy card and store it face up below your player board. Immediately you flip the next prophecy card in the region, and you may only fulfill a prophecy card at the end of your turn, and may fulfill at most 1 prophecy card per turn. For example, Twin Toils Forge Destiny Steel, and it has this icon, and it's also explained in the appendix, or this one, Seas Converge at Wharfs of Fate, and has these icons here. Okay, so these are prophecy cards, and you can find the explanation in the appendix if there is any clarification. Once if you fulfill it, you will gain it, but you can only gain 1, at most 1, during your turn, at the end of your turn. The last free action you can do is you can place your siege tile. If it is not already on the game board, you may place your siege tile in a space you control that contains at least 1 of your hoplites and a city that is controlled by another player, except if it is their only city, because you cannot eliminate them from the game. So these are the free actions that you can do between your actions, before or after your actions, in any order you want. Movement. Either before or after you perform a procure, deploy, build or settle rondel action, whether you chose to take that action or not, you may perform up to as many movements as indicated by the position on your navigation, on the navigation track. Certain action cards, mythology cards and strategy tiles may also grant additional movements. To perform a movement, you move 1 of your units to an adjacent space or port, subject to the rules of movement. Let's see those rules. Ships may only move between sea spaces or between sea spaces and ports. That means this blue ship can move here and then here, or from here to here, to the port. Okay? It's a different movement. Ships may only move between sea spaces and ports, but may carry as many land units as the number of movements you have, as indicated by your position on navigation track. While doing so, at no extra cost, you can move together with the units you're carrying. Moreover, while a ship is has land units on it, it must take those land units with it when it moves as a necessity, meaning that you cannot drop them in the sea, in the middle of the sea. Okay, they're carrying them with them until you decide to land them. Land units may board the ship and they are adjacent to for free. It costs 0 movement points to move one of your workers or hoplites from a land space to an adjacent sea space or port that contains one of your ships. Between 2 of your ships in the same sea space, you can also move land units. So for example, I can move those 2 here, okay? Or if I had, let's say, another ship, I can move them from this one to that one. Okay, they're still in the middle of the sea, but they moved from one another, if for any reason I want to do that. Okay? Right. Also, unless they're moving with a ship, land units may only move on land spaces. So the hoplites and the workers can only move on land spaces, so from here to here, okay, from here to here, if they are moving on land. Unless they're moving with a ship, they can move on sea spaces too. Moving a ship to an adjacent port or from a port to an adjacent sea space requires 1 movement. When you move your ship to a port, you must disembark any land units to the adjacent land space, which costs 0 movement. Meaning if I do that and I move on here, I will be able to disembark them here. Okay? Right. Which costs 0 additional movement points. You may move the same unit multiple times in turn, provided it does not return to any space it has occupied during that turn, including the one it started the turn in. As a reminder, whenever you move one of your land units into a land space, that space is considered explored and you reveal any face down resource and population tiles by flipping them face up. Now, let's see this example here with the blue player. Let's say the blue player has 2 movement points, loads their workers and their hoplites in the adjacent ship, which costs 0. So let's say they were here. Okay, he can load them on this ship with 0 cost. Then they can spend 1 movement point to move the ship together with the hoplite and worker 1 sea space. So from here they move here. Okay, so you put them close together to indicate that they are traveling with this sea unit. And then they disembark the hoplite to Kirin, but that costs 1 movement point. Okay, so they spend the first point to move from here to here, and the second one they can spend to move to Kirin on the land. Okay, so this is how movement works. Now let's focus on the rondel actions, which is the juice of the game. The Procure. So let's say I played an action card with a power of 1, so I'm moving here, so I'm going to make the Procure action. The Procure action allows you to gain new, more powerful action cards, either monument or character cards, from the procurement area on the left side of the game board. When you perform this action, you may procure face-up cards from any of the face-up piles from the procurement area by spending the specific resources depicted on the cards to be procured. When a card has a slash between 2 resources, those you choose only one resource to pay. So when I do the Procure action, I can take any of those, either one of the 3 character cards or one of the 3 monument cards, by spending the resources indicated on them. So for example, if I want to take this shield maker and make it my own, I need to spend those 2 resources, so that means 2 wood. Okay, and we've seen how we spend cards. Exile. For each character card you procure, this is a character card, it has this icon here, you may optionally exile a card from your hand or discard pile by removing it, essentially thinning your deck and making it more efficient by having, removing the basic cards perhaps. Procuring a monument. The top 3 slots of the procurement area, so 1, 2, 3, have monuments. To acquire a monument, you must spend 1 wood or 1 marble in addition to the specific resources depicted on the monument card. And this is shown here, 1 marble or 1 wood in addition to, let's say I was getting this one, 1 gold and 1 iron plus 1 marble or wood in order to acquire this monument, okay, which will go in my possession. Refreshing the procurement area. Before you your procure action, you may spend 1 resource of any type to refresh any or all cards in the procurement area by discarding them face down to the bottom of the respective decks and revealing the new top cards on each deck. Once you have paid the resource cost and stopped procuring cards, take the procured card or cards into your hand and reveal the new top cards of any procurement decks you procured cards from, if any. So not only are you going to procure more powerful cards, but they're going to be readily available for you to play following what you do. So this is how you acquire with the procure more powerful action cards, which is not only the number of the power they have, it's also the resources they have on, because you can spend them to by discarding the card in your discard pile to use the resources. They also have the abilities, which are very important, and they give you also some of them, they give you some amphorea sections. For example, again, this shield maker, it has the bottom of the 3 parts of the amphorea, and when you make a set you can use it. More on that later. So this is how procure works. Another option is the deploy. The deploy action allows you to place units on the game board and thereby increasing your strategic choices for settling, building and movement. When you perform this action, you place 1 or more of your units from your player board onto the game board by spending the resources shown on your player board below the units you're deploying. You may deploy an hoplite to any space where you have a city or citadel. You may deploy a worker to any space where you have a city or agora. And you may deploy a ship to a sea space adjacent to or a port corresponding to a space where you have a city or temple. So let's say in this turn I want to deploy a sea unit and an hoplite. Of course I'm going to need to pay, for example, for the sea unit 1 wood and 1 iron, and for the hoplite, and I take the cheaper option, the top one first, 1 gold and 1 iron, because you see the bottom one is more expensive. So pay 1 wood and 1 iron and 1 gold and 1 iron to deploy those 2 units. Let's see. The hoplite can be deployed either in an area where a land space where I have a citadel or a city state. So essentially, when I have a city tile, when I have a city tile, either my own color, or let's say I have a neutral one which I control, okay, I would be able to place it either here or here. But for the sake of this example, let's say I don't control any other city other than my starting one. That means that the hoplite can only go to my starting space. But the sea unit can go either in a sea area next to your city, so here, or a port next to your city, starting city, or any other city you control, or in the area adjacent to one of your temples or the port. Okay, in this case it's a common one, but let's say that I had progressed and I was here. Okay, let's do that. Let's say I was here. Actually, the worker, so they have built it. So I can place the sea unit either in the sea area where I have a city or to the port corresponding to it, or in the sea area where I have a temple or the port corresponding to it. Okay, so this is how deploy works. Respectively, for workers, if I were to place a worker, I can either place it next to an agora or in a city that I control. Keep in mind that for the strategy tile bonus, whenever you empty a row in the deploy section of your player, so board, let's focus again on my player board. In this example, remember, I just also decided to pay 1 gold and 1 wine to place one of my workers. Okay, then I emptied a whole row in my deploy area. That means I take one of the 2 face-up icons, strategy icons, with this icon, so any of the 2 with this one, which were on the top left side of the main board. I decide one and I place it here. So now I have this strategy tile, which gives me an additional ability. Okay. Later on, if I empty the second row, I can replace it with another one if I want to, but I need to discard this one. Same happens when I empty a deploy, a build line. I'm going to take one with this icon and place it here. And when I empty a settle line, I can take one strategy tile with cornucopia and place it here. And they give me additional abilities, which are very useful. Build. The build action allows you to construct one or more buildings and or cities on the game board. To build a building, you take one building from your player board and place it on the game board by spending the resources shown below that building on your player board. You may build each building on a land space where you have at least 1 worker, provided that you have no other buildings in that landscape. There is no other building of the same type in that land space, and that you have no other buildings in the same type in the region. If you do not have any available buildings of any type on your player board, you may instead move one of your buildings already placed on the game board to the space where you choose to build by spending the resources shown below that building type space in the top row of the building section of your player board. Now, there are special abilities of the buildings. Now you can see the cost to build your first temple is 2 marble, the second one is temple is 2 marble and 1 wood. The cost to build your first agora is 2 wood, your second agora is 2 wood and 1 marble, and your first citadel costs 1 wood and 1 marble, while your second one costs 1 wood and 2 marble. So these are the costs of the buildings, but these buildings have special abilities. Let's see first of all the citadel, which is this building here. The citadel provides 3 power for all game purposes within its land space. You may deploy your hoplites in its space, which is very, very valuable. The agora provides a discount of 1 resource of the type of its land space for each track progress made through your ascend actions. You may deploy your workers in this space also. And last, the temple allows you to have 1 more mythology card above your player board. By default, you may have only 1 mythology card above your player board, plus 1 additional card per temple you have built, for a maximum of 3 mythology cards. You may deploy your ships on sea spaces adjacent to a space containing one of your temples also. There is a strategy tile bonus over here. If you empty a row, you will be able to place similarly 1 strategy tile here. And then you have the build city. The build city is captured on the bottom left side of your player board. If there are city tiles here available, you can spend 1 marble, 1 wine, 1 iron and 1 gold in order to take that available city token or tile and build it in an area, a land space containing at least 1 of your workers and no other city. To indicate that you control the city, you place 1 of your markers on it like that. Okay. And this goes in 1 land space to indicate that it's yours. So this is how build a city works. But keep in mind, when you take the build action from the rondel, you can build 1 or more buildings and or cities on the game board by paying the appropriate costs. Next action on the rondel is the settle. The settle action allows you to remove population tiles and place pillars of your color on the game board. When you perform this action, you may settle 1 or more land spaces and or sea space containing Atlantis, where you have at least 1 land unit, worker or hoplite in your power, and your power matches or exceeds the one that of the player who has the highest total power in the space, and your power matches or exceeds the sum of any population tiles in the space also. In order to settle a sea space containing Atlantis, you must also have at least 10 powers in the space. So, recap. For each space you want to settle, you may also boost your power by discarding action cards matching the resource of the space to be settled from your hand. The power of each card you discard is added to your overall power in this space. You may boost your power to settle the sea space containing Atlantis accordingly by discarding cards matching any resource, provided all cards match the same resource. And this way you will be able to settle. Again, I remind that you need to match or exceed the power of the player who has the highest total power in the space, and your power matches or exceeds the sum of the population tiles in the space in order to settle the space. How you do that? When you settle a space, you must remove any population tiles from that space. For each tile removed, you take the reward shown on it, and you discard it unless it shows an amphora, in which case you place it next to your player board to make a set of amphoras, which you want to use later. When you settle sea space containing Atlantis, you place one of your player markers on the Atlantis tile, replacing the one that has on it, if any. Immediately after you settle a space, if there are no pillars already there, and provided that there are no population tiles there either, whether as a result of your settle action or otherwise, you may place one of your pillars from the settle area of your player board on that space. If you do not have any available pillars on your player board, you may instead move one of your pillars already placed on the game board to the new space. So let's see how this works. For example, I want to take the settle action, and I'm focusing on this area, on this land space here. I count my power. My power is 1 from the temple, plus 1 from the worker 2, plus 1 from the adjacent sea unit 3, plus 2 from the hoplite, for a total of 5. The amount of power equals or exceeds the amount of power on the tile, which is 4, so I have 5. That means that I can settle this by taking one of my pillars, placing it here, and gaining this as a reward. In this case, this gives me the reward of defeating a barbarian camp, which progresses me on the corresponding region track. Okay, and now I have my pillar here, which I can also use it to use the resource from the region, and also progress by theoretically emptying one of my rows in the settle area, which if I do, I take again one corresponding strategy tile like before and placing it on my player board. Also remind you for future turns that the pillar that I just placed also contributes 1 more power. So now my power, total power in this region is from 5 increases to 6. Don't forget to take the rewards from the population tiles in this way. So if you have this piece of the amphora, you place this population tile next to your player board, you may discard this to use its amphora fragment during the ascend action. You can either take one of the mythology cards by drawing 2 from the respective deck, whichever you gained as a reward, keeping 1 and returning the one at the bottom of the deck, or you can take a character or monument card from the procurement area into your hand as free at the end of your turn, and then flip the top card of the respective deck face up, or like in the example just showed you, to defeat a barbarian camp and progress on the corresponding region track for freeing the region from barbarian located in the region. So these are the population tile rewards, which are very nicely captured on the player aid as well. Now the last action on the rondel is the ascent. I remind you that you cannot move if you ended in the ascent section of the rondel. You can move if you end at procure, deploy, build, or settle. Ascent. The ascent action allows you to progress on the region tracks by spending resources and potentially gain powerful upgrades, including cities, mythology cards, and action cards, as well as passive abilities. In order to advance to the next step on a track, you spend the type of resource indicated on the corresponding track tile, and you do that as many times, meaning spending as many resources, as the number on the step you want to progress to. Or, instead of that, you discard 3 different amphora fragments by collecting the 3 pieces, the bottom, the middle, and the top, and doing it in order to progress. In case of Titan track, you may spend any resources, but you must be on the same type during the same ascend action. So for example, same type of resource, but any you choose to do so. After you have finished progressing on any tracks, you gain the track rewards of any steps you progressed to during the ascend action. And if you progressed more than 1 step on the same track, you gain rewards for all such steps accordingly. Keep in mind that an agora provides you a discount of 1 resource on the type of its land space for each track step of your ascend action. The discount applies whether or not the resource tile is in the space that has been depleted by a pillar or not. So let's see in practice how this works. Let's say I'm the yellow player and I want to progress in various tracks, but let's focus on one in particular. In this moment I'm focusing on this track here. In order for me to progress from the 0 step to the 1 step, if I want to progress one step, I need to pay 1 gold because that's the number of the destination, or give one collection of 3 sets, different bottom, middle and top pieces of the amphora, from cards and or discarding cards and or tiles that I have. I remind you that even some of the population rewards have an amphora piece on them. Okay, so I discard them, returning them back to the box. So I could also, let's say I'm here at 0 and I want to progress 2, and let's say I have 1 gold that I want to spend. Okay, so I spend 1 gold to progress here, and then I want to continue progressing. Let's say I had an agora build in a space containing gold, so I have 1 discount. That means I only pay 1 more gold instead of 2 to progress to the second step, and this discount actually comes for each of the steps. So if I had an agora in a space which provides gold, I would pay 0 to progress here, plus only 1 instead of 2 to progress here. So that will be the total final status of my payments. Also keep in mind that different tracks have different costs. So for example, you can either need to pay iron, wood or marble, or amphora pieces respectively for different tracks linked with different regions. So the game end. The game end is triggered when either a player at any time during their turn controls 6 cities, or when the players have collectively reached the end of number regions equal to the number of players. So if we're playing a 4-player game, 4 tracks reached their, have been collectively reached at the end of the number between all players, that is. Or when 3 era, 3 prophecy cards have been removed from the game board, meaning claimed from players. Once the game end has been triggered, you finish the current round and then play 1 more final round so that each player has had an equal number of turns. And then we proceed with accumulating and counting the number of glory that emerges from each player. To determine the winner, you tally up the glory you have earned through the game, including the glory fragments from fulfilled prophecies and monument cards, adding together any glory fragments you have gained, and it's possible to score partial glory, for example 2/3 fragments, or contribute 1 and 1/3 glory to your total. Okay, and then you award glory based on the control at the end of the game. Each glory you get glory for each city you control, and you earn glory for each region you control. Regions are evaluated starting with the top left and going in clockwise order. Before determining control over a region, starting with the player with the first player marker and continuing in clockwise order, each player may take 1 of their ships from an adjacent sea space and place it in one of the region land spaces to indicate to which land space that ship is contributing 1 power. If players are tied in total glory, the player who has progressed the most across all regions combined is declared the winner, and if still tied, the tied players rejoice in a shared victory. So this is how you calculate the glory and the winning at the end. You can see this is also reminded here, where you have the trigger of the game end and how you calculate the most glory. And that's why it's important to control cities, to build cities and control them, okay, and regions respectively. So there you have it. This is all the components, all the rules that you need to know on how to play Pillars of Heracles. Just to let you know that the game has a fantastic rulebook. It comes with an appendix of all the prophecy cards. It has an appendix with all the strategy tiles, appendix of all the keywords, appendix with the different game modes. You have the standard game mode, which I just explained. You have the Barbarian Hordes mode, which uses these tiles with the Barbarian Hordes, very interesting. You have the Simahia, where you play the 2 versus 2, for example. Or you have the Legendary Heroes, where you utilize these beautiful miniatures with their specific respective tiles you have over there, in order to use the abilities of the Legendary Heroes, which they can be deployed and by spending 2 gold, and they have the ability linked with that. Last but not least, there is the Skirmish mode, which offers skirmish play, which is very interesting, and also you have the solo mode. So there you have it. This is everything you need to know on how to play Pillars Pillars of Heracles. Hope you enjoyed this video. So there you have it. This is everything you need to know on how to play the game. Now, I know I started with all my cylinders bursting, really pumped and excited about the game, and I'm telling you, this is not because it's a new game. Sometimes, you know, new equals hype, etc. This is a game that it's here to stay. Whenever I'm going to be in the mood for a game in this genre with you know, with a bit of tech tree, with a bit of with civilization aspects, with deck building, with a rondel, it's one that is going to come most oftenly out of the shelf. And I'm telling that with all the weight that it carries, because I have some fantastic rondel games that I really enjoy. Antique is one of the one that comes on top of my head immediately, and other games also. But this game really delivers excellently the rondel mechanism, but there is seemingly the deck building intervened between, you know, the edges. You don't see the hard cutoff between the different mechanisms. You just see them working excellently together, and overall the game offers a ton of replayability. I want to play the game immediately again and again to try different ways of approaching, you know, getting more glory, to gain more mythology cards, to gain better action cards, to control different region, to develop myself a bit differently, more on the naval, more on the, you know, land units, to expand, build more buildings, you name it. So many different things to do. So I think regardless of the player interaction, which is there because you are competing against other players to do better, I think that this game really tries to make you outbest yourself. And it's not a solitary game. I'm not saying it in a way that you know, you're playing against yourself, but I want to do different things and try different things to see how they're going to roll out with my opponents on the table, on the game session, but trying different approaches. And this game offers different game modes, different ways to achieving more glory, different mechanisms, and they all come together excellently. So there are many games out there. Specifically many games with ancient Greece in the theme. Are they more heavy than others? I would position this somewhere in the middle, so it's a medium weight game, but very friendly to the ones who play casual games also. It has a lot, so it's not easy to digest, so it's not an entry game by no means, but it's not a very heavy game. Okay, that doesn't mean that it's not exceptionally fun, exceptionally strategic, and it has a ton of depth. It's the other way around. It has all these things, but it manages with well-crafted rules, with a very nicely designed game frame to deliver an amazing gaming experience. It offers, as I said, a lot of different ways to achieve victory. It offers a lot of game modes, and this is a plus. Nowadays, companies do not invest on that much on replayability, in my opinion. That even for great games, more great games are coming every day out, and they offer some replayability, but this one I think it has a lot because it has both sides of the map. We've seen it in other games also, but I wish more companies and publishers were doing that. It offers different game modes which give you different feeling. Okay, if you're playing versus barbarian hordes, or if you're playing a team mode, or if you're playing a skirmish mode, or if you're playing with a legendary heroes, which is another aspect and another mechanic in the game, a hero moving around with a special ability, etc., and you can deploy him and have his or her abilities on top of your other options and arsenal. It's really unique. So very well crafted. I'm super excited about the game. It's a game that I'm going to recommend to anyone who likes to play this type of games in this genre. Even if you haven't played, I would easily recommend it if it's your first or second game in this category. But even for experienced gamers, I think it's one that shouldn't miss from any library out there, because wow, it's great. And I think the design, the publishers, and the game itself, it deserves all the success. I know it's a new publisher, so they're not going to be seen a lot, or you know, as much as they deserve to be seen. But I'm definitely convinced that everyone who has tried the game, they're going to be impressed. They're going to advertise it on their friends, with the gaming group, their friends, the people they know and they play games with, because it's a really good game, very satisfying, very enjoyable, and offers a ton of fun. You feel achievement, you feel you have progressed, that you have done many things, that you have led a civilization, a city-state to glory, or not. So maybe someone has done it better than you, but in any case, you had fun and you tried different things and you really enjoyed it. So there you have it. This is Pillars of Heracles. I'm highly recommending this one, not to be missed by any chance. Fantastic game, fantastic design, and exceptional gaming experience overall. One of a few, because nowadays more and more great games are coming out there that they may be missed under the radar for many of us. Okay, naturally, there's so many, but this one is one not to be missed. So if you want to find out more about the game, check out the link in the description of the video. I also have added, as you've seen, timestamps where you can go and jump directly to the specific section of the video rules that you want to explore or identify. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, don't forget to play board games.